In 1980, Queen released The Game. Okay? Now, The Game was received well. It was received well. It was a relatively strong album. I wouldn't say it was along the lines of Queen 2 or Sheer Heart Attack, but this is a different era for Queen. Play the Game, I've loved for years. The first track, excellent track. There's a lot of, it's just a lot of Queen nuance in it as well. Fun fact, despite the fact Brian May is playing a Fender Stratocaster in the video, he did not record Play the Game with a Fender Stratocaster. He recorded it with the Red Special.
That is for the guitar nerds out there.
For the guitar. Dragon Attack, John Deacon's bass solo. In fact, I believe John Deacon once said that is his favourite Queen song.
Nice.
Loves Dragon Attack. Great tune. Very fun. When I was younger, I used to think it was a bit long, but it's kind of weird. It's like they're just letting loose a bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then you've got one of their biggest ever singles, Another One Bites the Dust. Because they're simpler tunes, but like you said, it's still Queen. It sounds like a band playing. Something they said from very early on was basically there might be a million guitar harmonies and vocal harmonies, but they will rock up their live performances, because obviously that's what you do when you're a four-piece. That's a sick album. That is, to me, that's Queen entering the 80s at brute force, doing, Queen peak 80s for me. That is The Game.
Yeah.
It's really good stuff. And it's, like I said, it bleeds back in it. I feel like the experience of doing that grandiosity, doing that big production, big arrangements, really complicated tunes with different time signatures, different sections and stuff like that, and then stripping it right back. I feel like that album's not, could I say a middle ground? Yeah, I'd say it's a good middle ground, because there's still complex songwriting going on, but it's simple in its complexity. Does that make sense? Tell me while I drink.
It does make sense, and you're right. It's still the Queen original sound. I also feel like you could take any of those songs, chuck them in a playlist with earlier album stuff. They all were very cohesive, and again, like Another One Bites the Dust is just, it has literal signature rock songs on it, like signature songs of just anything. And it's also worth to mention, which you probably have in your notes anyway, they seem to be very anti-synthesizer, and this album has the first use of a synthesizer. I want to say it's on the first track, and it's like So In Your Face, which is kind of like a precursor to what we're about to talk about. Yeah. Yes,
it's the intro. There's a big swell, big swell, which I believe, that is their first use of a synthesizer. We've spoken about Queen before. There's like, I think it's Queen 2, they have on the credits like synthesizers played by no one. And there's a track, I can't remember exactly the bit, but there's a big guitar build-up of lots of layers of guitar, and it sounds like synthesizer, which is really cool. But you're correct, I do believe that is the very first time Queen used synths. So yes, The Game, excellent album. I highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't already heard it. It's very varied, hey!
Very varied.
Sounds like Queen. It is Queen, obviously, at their best in the 80s, I'd say. And there's more to come from the 80s. We then find the fly in the ointment.
Oh, here it comes.
Okay, before I say anything else, a lot of people shut this album down immediately. They shut it down. It's the classic things. I always say, this is our mission statement, blah, blah, blah. And you go, and again. And I go, absolutely. We're Queen and the Beatles, good, blah, blah, blah. Kind of the thing, isn't it? Like, everyone shuts this album down. It's terrible, blah, blah, blah. Which is what we're here to argue against. So in 1982, Queen released, if you're not aware, Queen released an album called Hot Space. I love the cover for this album. If it's going to work.
Go on. There we go. I can see it. Brian May. Brian May is in the bottom right corner.
Yeah, it's being a bit rubbish, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Let It Be album, but very much, very like bright colors and things like that. But yeah, I like it. I like it too. It looks like 80s.
Yes. Yeah, yes. I think it's really cool. I think it's a solid idea. I think it's better than the album after. That artwork's not very good at all. So, essentially, and to at least half the band hated this. They went to Munich in a big, like, grey, depressing building in the early 80s, and they basically went to record this album. Now, what they weren't aware of until they got there was the building itself is infamous for people throwing themselves off the top of it from killing themselves.
Wow.
It was a very depressing building. The studio was in the basement of this building, and there were a lot of drugs around, a lot of loose men and women. There were a lot of bad influences, and I think you can hear it in this album, because it's not just like 80s synth pop. It is very dark in places. You'd agree with that, wouldn't you, Mark?
Yeah, definitely. It's not just a all one emotion all the time. So it's not that far. Yeah. In terms of emotional feel, it still has the Queen gamut. Yeah.
It's still, I mean, yeah, we say completely different to the album before. It still sounds like Freddie Mercury. It's just like a complete shift entirely of songwriting in a lot of ways. And I mean, I've listened to this album quite a few times. When I decided that I wanted to listen to everything they'd ever done, I listened to it then. And I remember thinking back then, my opinion on first listening, because everybody does it, they're like, oh yeah, crap album, never listens to it. I thought, no, I'm going to listen to it, I'm going to give it a chance. And I was listening to it, and I was like, this isn't what I'd want, you know?
Yeah.
This isn't the level that I'd expect from them in terms of like, oh, I don't know. It's just not what I'd expect to hear from Queen, you know? And yeah, I mean, I think I've always said to you, I've always maintained that, you know, I really respect them because they had already morphed into this separate thing from what they were 2-3 albums ago. And now, again, they're trying to morph again, they're trying to change again. Part of this inspiration was Another One Bites the Dust. It was that influence of 80s club, disco, tech sort of, you know, atmosphere, getting the energy in the tracks. And Freddie wanted to do a whole album. So, Hot Space, 10th studio album by Queen, released 21st of May 1982 by EMI in the UK, Elektra in the US, marking a notable shift in direction from their earlier work. They employed many elements, not elephants.
A lot of elephants were used.
A lot of elephants.
Not very animal friendly. Yeah, that's the problem. That big thing at the start, you know, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Actually, it was a synthesizer. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, man. Ivory keys on the synthesizer. They employed many elements. I really like that sentence. They employed many elements. No, they didn't just use genres, they employed elements. Bit of alliteration for you there. Disco, funk, rhythm and blues, dance and pop music. This made the album less popular with fans who preferred the traditional rock style they had come to associate with the band, which is absolutely true. It wasn't hugely well accepted. We will get to that. Queen's decision to record a dance-oriented album germinated with the massive success of their 1980 hit Another One Bites the Dust. So, yes, it had 4 producers, included a Mr. David Bowie, which we will get to. A lot of people don't realise that song's on this album.
Yeah, because they don't listen to it because they go, well, it's rubbish. Yep. As exactly. Apparently a review said, it was hot shit into the hot space.
Yes, I've heard that before.
No.
I have heard that before, which, so yeah, as Brian may have admitted, the record's somewhat protracted gestation had a lot to do with the creative dynamic in the band. We moved out to Munich to isolate ourselves from normal life so we could focus on the music. He later said, we all ended up in a place that was really unhealthy, a difficult period. We weren't getting along. We all had different agendas. It was a difficult time for me personally. So you can kind of hear that, you know, as we've said, it is a bit dark in places. There is a change in emotion, but then it's still got that Queen personality about it. There are two things about this album that I love, and that is, let's see if James can pronounce it, shall we?
Go on, boy.
Las Palabras de Amor. I love that tune. I think it's wonderful.
I do too.
And of course, Under Pressure with David Bowie. Really cool story behind that. Super cool story behind that. They basically met up for a bit of lunch or something, and they were talking, and they decided after a few drinks to go back to the studio and have a jam. And basically, Brian said openly, he was like, you know, a few people were argued down with their ideas. He said, his own words were, I allowed myself to be argued down, which is unusual for me. And I was like, all right, Brian, don't get all, shut up.
What's the Badgers saying?
Yeah, go and fight the Foxes with them. So, yeah, they basically, this is really funny. They were jamming for a bit, and then John Deacon came up with dun 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 dun, dun. It's obviously the main bass riff from Under Pressure.
From Ice Ice Baby, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what he does. He rips people off all the time. Yeah.
That's what he does. That's what he does. Disgusting. Disgusting. So yeah, and then they all went for pizza, and they came back, and John Deacon forgot it.
Nice.
Couldn't remember it. Eventually, he did remember it, and they kind of put it together. David Bowie was really insistent about all the finger clicks and the claps. Really insistent. He was like, no, it's got to happen. And they kind of decided to take both the vocalists away from the process, Freddie and David. And they put them in separate rooms to record separate things. What they didn't account for was opening Freddie coming out of his vocal booth to find David Bowie leaning up against it, listening to what he was doing. But the product was Under Pressure, which I think is one of the best songs they've ever been involved with. It's incredible.
One of the best Queen songs, probably one of my favorite Queen songs.
It's amazing. It is fantastic. Right. It's Queen, but it's not. As difficult as it may have been to come to a creative consensus, they still managed to move forward, playing with their sound and establishing a version of Queen that broke with their hit albums of the past. With Hot Space, the group played around with synths and dance beats, relying on spare arrangements and brass flourishes to get the songs across instead of stacked sonics that helped make them worldwide superstars. So I agree with that. Instead of using their traditional technique of let's be a band, they used, much to Roger Taylor's distaste, they used things like drum loops and synthesizers, and he hated it. He was, even now he still says things like, whose idea was that? Jesus. They embraced that sort of sound more fully with Hot Space, but the evolution of it was a bit too far for loads of fans and critics. Like you said, someone said it was hot shit or something. Hot chip. Lukewarm reviews. It was a commercial disappointment. It peaks at number 4 in the UK. Didn't break the top 20 in the US at all. Body Language, the first release, was a medium, wasn't a very big hit in either the US or the UK. And the other singles didn't really build on it or match the momentum of it, you know? So it's kind of a strange one. It's an odd one because they're already a big band. I kind of see it I don't know if this is going to make sense, but I kind of see it in the same way that I see Saint Anger.
Yeah.
You know, they're trying something different. They're trying something they've never done before. And they're still trying to make sense of the situation they're in, as well as write, record, produce, churn out an album.
Also, with Body Language being the first single, that's such a huge departure. It really is. That song to me, if you don't want to listen to Hot Space, you don't have to. It's really not that long either. It's about 43 minutes. It's all right.
Yeah, it's less than an hour. Yeah.
Just listen to Body Language, and if you're like, this is terrible, then I think in your mind you've got over the worst of it. I think it gets better from that. And in my head, I would say Action This Day, which is the fifth song, 1, 2, 3, yeah. From track 5 all the way down, you do actually start to get this the Queen sound that you've kind of heard before coming back. I think because maybe the guitar's more prominent. There might be some solos, like there's the real drums, like it does start to come back. So I can see people listening to this, even just side A, back in the Dizzy, Dizzy, whatever. The first 4 tracks, right? That's really going to test your patience with Queen. You're either going to go, nah, they've lost it. I ain't doing this anymore. Screw that. But you do miss out on, the last half. I think the last half is stronger, is what I'm trying to say. Mez, thoughts, please, as the Queen aficionado.
I firmly agree. Yeah, the second half, it's the classic is always it's the bare bones of this. I think there's more than the bare bones there of a decent second half of a Queen album. Certainly. Yeah. I agree with you. Under Pressure is definitely tacked on to the end. And again, Las Palabras de Amor, Words of Love, that again doesn't really fit for me in that album. Mm-mm. I don't know. Hot Space is certainly never going to be my favorite Queen album, but it's certainly never going to be one where if we're on a long road trip and someone goes, all I've got is Hot Space, I'm not going to vomit. It's acceptable enough in my mind. But then I'm an enormous Queen fan. Some people some people hear it and go, what is that? Get that gone.
Yeah.
And it's contextual, isn't it? It's that whole thing of Saint Anger. It's that whole thing of Iron Maiden in the 90s. It's that whole thing of let it be. Look at the context of it. Look at the reasons why these artists may or may not be producing the best thing since sliced bread. Because 2 years after that, after Hot Space, you've got, as I said, you've got The Works, which has some amazing tunes on it. Absolute. What you would basically in the 70s they built up and helped for the start of stadium rock, and then in the mid 80s they wrote a load of stadium rock bangers that absolutely kick off in that context.
Yep. It's almost like every Queen album has at least one, and then definitely in regard to Hot Space, definitely at least one signature Queen song and or signature rock song of all time. It's almost like every single album does that. And then you got to view, how do you view a band or artist discography? Do you go through every single album? Do you round up the best songs and go, right, this is the best era of what we've got? You completely devoid any of the kind of time, the chronology of it. You just go, right, this is all the best of it. But it's like from Queen 1 to Made in Heaven is over 2 decades. It's like 25 years almost. And that's not with all the original members even alive by the time it came out and all these things, right? So there's so much of that has gone on that point that you kind of think, well, okay, look at them album by album. But it's like, Hot Space was a blip. It's probably one of their weaker works, if not their weakest work.
Yeah.
But you don't have to view it as like, that's the be all and end all. That's when it started going bad. This is when it is. But this is more of a personal revelation, maybe for me, of like, how do you view your albums? Why should you view them that way?
That one album released nearly 40 years ago has made you take a look and go, oh, okay, this is kind of interesting to think about,
Because imagine if you were like, right, I only listened to Queen up to the Game, which is the one before Hot Space. I'm learning, I'm getting there. And then you go, don't even listen to Hot Space. If you're talking about this to somebody else and be like, that's when they started going down. All the classics weren't there, and it's like that would make someone go, well, Queen are only good up until 1980. Other than that, it's all bad. I haven't listened to any of that because I've been told that one album was bad. I don't want to listen to bad Queen. I only want to listen to good Queen. And then you get all these things, so you miss out on certain eras, you miss out on certain songs.
Yeah,
you miss out on, because again, you then build up your musical palette, so you might listen to way more disco or funk or R&B orientated music that's other artists. Then suddenly you might hear Hot Space or say 80s Queen. You might go, oh, I actually like this now because my musical diet's changed. So it's just maybe the album is just not for you at that point, and you can't help if you don't like something, but you can help if you can just hate something and go, I don't like it. Why not? Because I don't. It's like, okay.
Great.
Yeah, and exactly, it's like you said, mission statements are just there. Like, let's just dispel these myths, because we've all done it ourselves, and I see the impact now that we go for this and go, let's listen to it, let's go for it. If you like Queen, you're gonna love that. If you don't like Queen and you just listen to all of that, I mean, I don't really care. Not my problem. Not my problem. You're learning something, but
absolutely.
Exactly. One little blip in their whole career.
Oh,
crying then. I was nearly crying.
Oh, he's so emotional.
So emotional about Queen. One little blip in their career, and to be honest, I mean, they still had one massive song on that, so it almost redeems the whole thing.
They didn't just do that album and go, oh, synths, never again, and blame the synthesizers for the bad reception for Hot Space.
Yeah.
They used the synths. They did their mistake. They stood by the mistake. Didn't do very well. And then the album after, amazing, fantastic. I was going to say a lot more, but I think if I carried on, this would be a 4-hour episode of Mets talking about Queen. And I can do that any time of the day or night.
You should go on get your axe that you got in your hand right now, and that's what you should do. Threaten people and go, oi, if you don't listen to this album right now, I need a new skull for this axe, all right?